certainly wasn't planning this morning to do another update with regard to our coronavirus negotiations between landlords and tenants, whether we're acting for landlords or tenants, trying to keep the tripartite relationship between landlords, tenants and bankers together instead of forcing closures. But the news that the restaurant group has gone for a CVA, which is a voluntary arrangement whereby landlords will surely be outvoted. They have the best part of 285 sites. They're closing 125 sites. They include the well-known Frankie and Benny's, Coast to Coast and Garfunkel's, and they've been forced into a CVA. Just shows me that the government have not given enough time yet for the moratorium when landlords can't take action against tenants, which came in March and will expire in June. The government certainly needs to give another 3 months in order for landlords to digest that restaurateurs, clubs, bars, casinos, etc., many of whom we're negotiating on behalf of, do need help. And it's not just a deferment of rent, which is kicking the can down the road. It's help if the landlord wants to keep his tenant in place and actually wants to have a tenant instead of actually trying to relet the property in a market which is going to be devastated by the number of closures around them. Then they really have to listen and have to come to their clients' help. There are all sorts of ways of doing this, whether it's giving a 6 months rent-free period and putting another year on the lease, whether it's going to be on a profits method evaluation, i.e. that once the restaurant gets into profit, they pay back some of the rent-free period they're given. But with the staff costs of when furloughing starts coming off, most of these restaurateurs cannot see their way clear to actually making a profit. There have also been some other notable closures this week, which is a real shame. The Ledbury in Notting Hill has had to announce that it's closing. The Frog in Hoxton, Wahlburgers, which I did the deal on originally. I actually surrendered the old Maxwell's lease in James Street, Covent Garden, to Capco, and they were so pleased to get Wahlburgers, the American branch, as the #1 hamburger company in the world, and they've decided to close their door, and also Texture in Marylebone. So it's a really sad day for the restaurant industry and for the leisure industry generally. I really don't understand landlords, especially their young asset managers, not accepting that when tenants are coming to them, they're coming to them with real cases. Melanie Leach of the British Property Federation is suggesting that landlords should vote against the CVA, but all that's going to do is force the company into liquidation eventually, so they'll still get their premises back. And yes, the pensioners who have got their money in their pension funds will suffer to some extent. The real thing is the mathematics of all of this, that a restaurant paying, let's say, $500,000 a year wants a rent-free period of £250,000, let's say 6 months to get them home, right? That $500,000 a year on 20 years purchase is worth £10 million to the landlord. So instead of it being worth £10 million, it's worth £9.75 million. And it's about time the bankers came in and helped their landlords give their tenants rent-free periods and rent waivers instead of just asking for rent deferment. I know it's natural for landlords to think that in the good times tenants don't pay extra rent, but they do when they come round to rent reviews, and rents have almost doubled in Mayfair over the last 5 years. So the landlords have had a good time of it, but now is the time when we really want to keep our London open. It would be nice to have some of the old clubs, bars and restaurants reopening. Social distancing is causing a massive problem to them in connection with their future turnover, and there's nothing in the lease which allows them to reduce their rents because they can't actually run to the capacities which they used to run to. And this doesn't just go across the leisure industry. We're involved in literally probably about 40 or 50 different negotiations on offices, especially in the serviced office market, where clients of ours desk rates were already going down before the coronavirus, but our people really going to want to rush back into sitting next to a stranger and risk getting the virus until this dreadful disease blows over our shores, life is not going to get back to normal. And in Layman's, for example, there was a 30% drop between June quarter day, September quarter day and December quarter day 2008, where three negotiations in Old Burlington Street, one of which I handled, were settled at £102 a square foot, £78 and £68 a square foot respectively. It could be much worse when we get back to work, and the most important message I can give to landlords is do everything you can to help your tenant and keep your tenant, because you don't want to be one of those landlords with empty premises. It shouldn't be forgotten that we act for a lot of landlords on their claims they get from tenants, and we mirror image our advice in that connection. The landlord's entitled to know everything about the tenant. All right, and there's nothing wrong with him stripping the tenant bare in order to make sure he knows exactly that the case is genuine, and genuine cases need support. If we don't do this, we're not going to go back to the London we ever thought we used to know, and even worse in the provinces where we're